Welcome everyone to today's webinar, which happens to be launch day of Bluebeam Revu 2016. Thank you all for joining me today. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start off. One, if you have questions, feel free to ask in the chat or Q&A window, and I will address those as I go and kind of give everyone some time to be able to kind of open the floor and ask questions as we go. Outside of that, again, this is launch day 2016 for Bluebeam Revu. So thank you all. You're some of the very first people to be able to see this product and all the new and exciting features we have baked into this year's program. Today's webinar is, as you see here, presented by our friends over at Novedge, a fantastic group that helps us out. And if you have questions, feel free to go to novedge.com. They've got a fantastic website over there with a lot of different resources. My name is Nick Decker. I'm a senior industry specialist here at Bluebeam Software, dealing fairly heavily within the technical spaces, architectural, engineering, construction, as well as manufacturing. So if you have spaces in that, or questions within that space, again, feel free to ask me as we go. So we're going to do a little bit of background first on Bluebeam Revu for those of you that may be new to this, and what the product is able to do and where it comes from. And then we'll dive into the software itself. So with that, Bluebeam Revu is kind of primarily set up as a PDF software to address, as I alluded to before, the technical industries. So anything with kind of a document-intensive workflows is really where Revu kind of shines from any other PDF software. So what we have here is kind of a quick study, if you will, of the life cycle of a construction project, and it goes everything from feasibility and front-end design all the way through kind of detailed engineering, procurement, getting all your pieces together, the actual construction process, and then into operations, maintenance, and lifecycle management. That's a very, very long lifecycle, a lot of times within the construction process, but Revu is capable to address each and every one of those aspects and workflows, as well as kind of the nuances and individual workflows within each one of these spaces as well. And so we'll kind of discuss what those look like and how Revu is able to address those as we go. It is not specifically just for the architects and engineers and construction of the world. It is a fully open PDF platform, and so you're able to not only work in the construction drawings, but any other type of PDF and distribute that in very high fidelity to anyone else, whether they have Bluebeam Revu software or not. And that's the glorious part about the PDF platform is it's an ISO standard. A very useful way to be able to, again, distribute and kind of have interoperability between different softwares. So just a little bit about Bluebeam Revu. It does have quite a lot of traction within, as I mentioned, the AEC space. And so you see some different statistics here about major firms within not only the U.S. but international as well, because it is built kind of to be able to address those individual workflows as I mentioned. So with that, we're going to get in. I really want to dive into the software, and so we're going to talk very kind of upfront, if you will, about the basics of Revu. Give everyone kind of a baseline understanding of what the product is and how to operate it, and you'll see here that starts with the interface itself. So just like any other software, you want to be able to understand where the buttons are, what to click, what to press, and where to access all of that feature information that you're looking for. Beyond that, with this being PDF, you really want to be able to mark up and mark up efficiently. So when you start talking about the workflows of being able to print something out into paper and using your red pen to make little margin comments and things like that, that can all be taken digital. And so you're not walking to and from the printer to print it out and then scan it back in, and do it much more efficiently and actually leverage those those markups for later reuse as well. So you're not kind of redoing everything every single time. The tool chest is kind of the next aspect down the line as far as, again, kind of that reuse of all those markups that you're placing on the page. So once you go through the process of customizing markups, you want to be able to then leverage those down the road for later reuse, not only for yourself and your machine, but your teammates and project collaborators as well. Next, we'll be doing the markups list, which is essentially a spreadsheet attached to each and every one of your PDFs. It's a very fantastic tool to be able to leverage all the data that you're placing on the page, and we'll see what that looks like as well. And then finally, we'll get into Bluebeam Studio, which is a cloud collaboration platform that comes with every seat of review to be able to not only host your documents, but kind of work in an open live platform as well. Now, again, this is kind of the basics of the program, and really where I want to spend a lot of my time is actually on these brand new features. So these were just announced literally 60 minutes ago. So again, you guys are the first people to be able to see these in live time. And that starts, as we see here, with batch markup summary, being able to leverage not only the markups on an individual page, but all of the pages combined. We'll get into legends, which essentially becomes a spreadsheet on your PDF as well. Revit enhancements for those of you that may use Revit for your daily workflows within architecture and construction, engineering, things like that. We've got some fantastic additions to that space. Some different document management tools, and then we'll get into tags, which is a fantastic tool to be able to kind of understand the documents that you're working with. And then finally, we have some general enhancements as well. All right, that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the software. And we're going to start right here within this interface. Now, the Bluebeam Revu interface should feel very similar to those of you that work in the Windows environment, as you're able to access most of your settings through the command bar, the ribbon across the top. Now, you'll notice, for example, the markup tools are currently grayed out, and that's because I don't have a document open. So this little bit lighter gray space down here is our document viewing area, and what we're going to do is actually open up an example document to show this off. Now, in this particular case, I have just a standard general notes architectural drawing, but I want to be able to access the drawings within that folder as well. So beyond just having one particular file pinned up, I have the ability to dive into the folder itself with a couple clicks and be able to see these particular files. Now, you'll notice this one has a stamp on it that may be superseded, and we'll talk about what that means and how to leverage these individual markups and stamping processes and document flow later on. But in the meantime, I do want to actually show a specification as well. So a lot of times you'll need to work with kind of 8.5 by 11 structural, or excuse me, specifications of any type, and to do that, you want to be able to leverage Revu's capabilities to view not only 8.5 by 11s, but those wide format drawings that we're seeing here. So from here, I can go ahead and actually split my screen, and I'm going to fly through most of this, again, just to kind of conserve some time and get into the new features. So from here, you'll see that I kind of have both documents open kind of side by side, and they're all in tabular format. Again, this should feel familiar if you're used to, for example, Internet Explorer, and I can kind of bounce back and forth between these and work with them side by side. Now, with this, I also have the ability to split my screen a couple more times as well, up to 16 individual splits if I'd like, and you can see it gets the ability to view these individual files kind of in wherever I would like is very useful. Now, in this case, it's going to get a little cluttered on my particular laptop screen, and so I don't have the multiple monitors, but I would, if I did, be able to take any of these tabs and pull them over to a different monitor as well. Now, in this case, I'm going to go ahead and unsplit my screens and work in one file. In this case, I'm just going to do this little notes file here. And I want to start marking this up. Now, again, this could be on any other file type as well, or file, but I want to really understand how to place my content on the page. And so I have a few options. One, I can come up to my markups tab here, and you'll notice that these are no longer grayed out. And so I have some individual category options that are all available because this is a unlocked and free document to be able to start working with. Now, for example, I can go ahead and just place a text box on the page and literally just start typing text box, for example, and place that. And now this may be a little bit big, so I'm going to right-click and actually auto-size and kind of fit it up to whatever I'd like. Now, I'm not going to go through every single one of these tools, but for example, I do a little call out here and place an arrow. I can come in and cloud a particular area. Now, you'll notice these are 3 individual markups. So instead, we have a tool called a Cloud Plus, which would allow me to cloud or work with individual files very easily, individual markups that kind of combine those 3 markups that I placed earlier. So in this case, I can go ahead and identify an area of the drawing and actually place a call out or leader line that always attaches to that particular cloud without having to go back and do any rework or have 3 individual markups like I did up here. So with that, I also have the ability to customize all these markups. Again, this is going very, very quickly, but I want to get into the meat and potatoes of this particular presentation. Now in this case, I'm just going to select all of these markups and change the properties. So I haven't really talked too much about these panels here. In this particular case, this one was file access, but a very important one as well on the right-hand side, and I can access it with a right-click, is my properties panel. And so from here, I can go ahead and just type out the author name and maybe a subject, say, whatever I'd like it to be. And then I can come in and actually change the physical properties or aesthetic properties, maybe give it a fill color. You'll notice when I give it a fill, it becomes opaque. So to change that, I can actually check the highlight box and allow the content to pop through. Maybe change the fill opacity up a little bit. And then finally, I have the ability to, for example, change the text, which would change it from red to black or whatever else I'd like. Now, in this case, I'm only changing the properties a couple at a time, but I have the ability to also change it, an entire page very easily. It doesn't matter how many markups I want to change. They will all change and be consistent with each other. Now, the next aspect that I do want to touch on is what's called our tool chest. So in this case, I've got a couple markups that I have kind of spent the time customizing. Again, I didn't spend a whole lot of time on it. But if I want to be able to leverage those for later reuse, I can come over to my tool chest and be able to kind of see where these markups are located. In this case, the new markups that I placed on the page are located in my recent tools. And there's those 4 markups, each of the individual ones that I placed on the page. And they are, again, as I mentioned, in the recent tools, which will clear out every time I close a review. So what I want to do is actually kind of leverage these for later reuse by dragging them into an existing tool set. So in this case, I could pull them into the My Tools, or for example, into an Architect Review, existing tool sets, which are all based on which profile I'm in, which I'm in the Design Review profile. But in this case, I'm actually going to create a new one as well, and I'm going to call it Novedge. Click OK, save it to my computer, and now I have a blank tool set that I can go ahead and add these different tools to. Now in this case, I can also do it from the interface by right-clicking again and add to tool chest. So from here, I click the Novedge, and you'll notice that those 4 tools will now populate. So from here, I can go ahead and actually use an exact copy of the tools that I placed earlier, or I have the ability to just use the format or properties by right-clicking and putting into properties mode. You'll now see that I have this cloud tool ready to use, but it's not going to do that exact same size as I picked before, but it is going to use the physical properties that I went through and customized. Okay. From here, I've started to kind of make a mess of the page. So what I want to do is actually start leveraging this data. There may be some information I need to capture, for example, these individual text lines, as well as kind of customizing or seeing these individual markups on the page. So with that, I can come down to my markups list, which is this third and final panel down here at the bottom of the page. Now, in this particular case, you'll notice that under subject, for example, it corresponds with that comments subject that I gave it earlier on. So if I pop open the properties panel again, you'll notice that what I defined over here in subject is also being reflected here in this row over here. Now this is broken down by rows and columns, and you can see here, for example, page labels, authors, dates and times, as well as coloring, and anything that has text is also being captured in the comments list. Now in this particular case, I only have 6 comments or different line items markups on the page, but you can imagine this list getting pretty long pretty quick. And in fact, that's what I'm going to go ahead and do, is pop open an example of some files that may require a little bit more work or enhancement. So to do that, I'm going to pop open my documents. And in this case, I have 3 different files, each with their own comments. In this case, someone has gone and sent over some comments of their own. And what I'm going to do is actually import or start working with the architect's comments and import over someone else's comments. In this case, excuse me, the contractor and the engineer. They've been nice enough to send over their comments and actually color code them for me. And you'll see now that there's lots of blues and purples and greens, which all correspond to those tool sets that we saw before. Engineer, contractor, and architect are those same comment color schemes that are coming over from the tool chest, excuse me. Now, this list starts to get a lot longer, and what I want to do is actually kind of harness this information. And to do that, again, I have the ability to kind of work with this data just like I would in Excel. So in this case, I can sort by any header I'd like. I could sort by date to kind of make a chronological order. I could sort by author, which would allow me to kind of see if there's different authors, or by subject, which is really where I want to start working. They've been nice enough to label these architect, contractor, engineer, and the snapshot, which are a couple kind of auxiliary tools. I also have the ability to filter. So if I just want to work with, for example, the contractor comments, you'll notice everything else has grayed out if it doesn't have the subject of contractor, which is good, because in this case, I'm just going to work with the contractor comments. And from this particular point, I can go ahead and accept or reject or status any of these other comments just by clicking through. It's going to, anytime I click on a line item, it jumps me to that spot of that page, and I can go ahead and apply a status from here. Now, for example, if I put a status of completed on this particular item, and I come back and I change my mind, I can still go ahead and change that. So, for example, I need to change this to rejected, and you'll notice that those statuses stack one on top of the other, which is very useful because it shows me that workflow and see, oh, well, only a couple seconds after it was assigned completed, it was assigned rejected. There must have been some sort of error there because that was corrected very easily. Now, for example, if something was rejected and then come back as accepted, there may be some work that was gone on behind the scenes, and I can go ahead and explain that with a comment as well and say owner changed mind per meeting on 2/26. And I can place that comment and be able to kind of capture that particular workflow based on the markup that I'm working with. So from here, I have the ability to run a summary. Now, I'm not going to spoil the surprise here, but in this particular case, I would just be able to run the summary based on the data that's in front of me. So on this particular document by itself. So from here, I can go ahead and run a CSV or PDF summary. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and kind of attach this document to the drawing itself. As I pop over to the thumbnails tab, you can see that I have kind of a broken down summary kind of by particular person. In this case, contractor with 9 particular items. and any sort of responsibilities or any other data that's being included down here would also be included in the report itself. Now in this case, if I zoom in, I can see that there's also a hyperlinked because my cursor changes to a hand with an H, and that means it's going to jump me back to that particular spot of the page. So again, I don't want to spoil the surprise, but that we have a new feature that really kind of accelerates that particular process as well. So the last thing I want to mention, and I'm not going to get into it too heavily right now, but it's the ability to work in Studio. So Studio is our cloud platform baked into Revu again that allows you to not only host your documents as a kind of document management system, so I can have different projects open and be able to access those particular files, but also be able to work in a live environment. So in this case, I'll just kind of show off a quick example. But this is an entire folder structure, several gigabytes worth of information in this particular case, of individual files that I can then access directly from this location. It does not have to be PDF only, and so you're seeing an Excel file and a Word file, things like that, are all able to be stored here, as well as things such as Navis or Revit files that you can then start working with and revisioning directly from here. Now, the other aspect that I kind of alluded to is the ability to kind of work in a live environment, which is Studio Sessions. Studio Sessions allows me to open any particular live environment. In this case, I just have one file by myself. But if I was working with a teammate, I could invite them over and have them work with me. I don't have to kind of close or lock this out, have it checked out just to me. We can be in here simultaneously and working together. I don't have time to go over kind of how all of that works, but I promise you it is very neat, and we have some videos online that detail that particular workflow. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and kind of transition back to these new features. Now, as I alluded to, and I kind of read through this list, we're going to go ahead and actually start with batch markup summary, which is very similar to that last workflow that I went through. Now I'm going to kind of clean this up by closing all these documents I don't need to save. What I do need to do, actually, is pop open my new files. So in this particular case, I'm just going to open one file, and you'll notice that it has a markup. But I also, if I come back into that particular folder, have several other markups, or excuse me, pages in here that have their own respective markups. And I don't want to have to go down to the markups list and run this summary report for each individual file. So instead, what I'm going to do is come back up to my file and batch dialog, and here at the bottom is the ability to run a summary report. And it's going to run it on that batch of files or whatever I tell it to run on. In this case, I can go ahead and add all sorts of files. And I'm just going to add that folder of files, in this case the sheets that I want to run the report on, which is about a dozen files. Now, you'll notice this load batch button. We'll talk about that in a moment, but it will automate that file picking process as well. So this, as I click the next button, it's going to bring me to a selection dialog where I can go ahead and pick which columns from the markups list that I want to pull into this particular report. Now, several of these may kind of be redundant. In this case, I don't need two different types of dates, but I do want, for example, the author, the date, one of the dates, the creation date, the status, maybe the page, the subject, and then finally we'll do, for example, responsibility and file name as well. Now I can reorder these as well. So for example, if I want responsibility ahead of file name, I can do that here as well. You'll also notice another load button. This is load config, which is going to pull in all the settings that I establish one time. So in this case, I'm just going to run through this once, and then I can go ahead and populate all these settings automatically. So the very next step brings me to my sorting and filtering. So very similar process to what you saw when I did this on a one document basis. I have the ability to sort or filter any of the information that I see here. Now in this case, I'm going to actually filter by responsibility and only pick certain individuals that I want to run reports for. So I may not need to know run a report for each individual person, but I do want to run them for a handful of people. And also, I'm going to sort by responsibility as well to be able to see who I've broken down or seen each one of these markup lists kind of individually. So D. Sanchez should have a list ahead of J. Reynolds and L. Pelosi. You get the idea. And then finally, I'm also going to go ahead and sort by status because I want to be able to see kind of those accepted and rejected statuses kind of broken down individually and kind of sorted out by that particular item. So again, I don't have to go through this setup every single time because once that configuration is loaded, it will pre-populate all this information. So this final last dialog should feel familiar to those of you that have done the markup summary context because it gets into the actual physical properties that I want to be able to leverage. In this case, I can go ahead and save or pick where I'd like to save these particular items. In this case, I'm going to run this report in the exact same folder structure that the original files came from. I can give it a title, and I can pick the export functionality, or excuse me, file format, so CSV, XML, PDF, or just print. I also want to mention this create multiple reports, and I'm going to show this because I think it's pretty neat, is the ability to run a report based on my senior sort, if you will. So you'll notice in this case it's responsibility, which corresponds to this cell here. If I were to change that, I could run that broken out by status or date, whatever I'd like, and be able to run individual reports, and we'll see what that looks like in a moment. And I'm also going to go ahead and import a template. So in this case, I have a template already populated, and it looks something like this. Maybe this is some letterhead that I want to be able to leverage that's project specific in this particular case, or it's anything else that I want to kind of define the dimensions. In this case, it's basically an 8.5 by 11 sheet that I want all of my data to fit into. Go ahead and click OK. Again, I don't have to run through this after I've done it once, and I go ahead and save my functionality. The last thing I want to mention is include hyperlinks. So very similar to that hyperlinking function we saw with one sheet, it will do this exact same process to each individual sheets and essentially act like a hub. So I'm going to go ahead and save this batch. You'll see it saves as a BCX, and then I'll save the config, which will save here as a BCF, kind of review specific file formats. And from here, I'm going to go ahead and click Done. This process will run, and it will populate, in this case, only the 15 individual comments that were broken down by the individual people. So in this case, it created all 4 of those individual files for me, and I can shoot off an email to those individual people directly from here. Maybe pick D. Sanchez and send it off to D. Sanchez, again, directly from the interface. You'll see that D. Sanchez only has 3 items, and they're broken out, again, by the latest and greatest assigned status. So as I click through, you can see M. Starcher, again, kind of broken out based on the status that is assigned to each one of these. Now, very similar process to the individual one document report is this little thumbnail. It shows me where this is located, and I would be able to find, for example, the file by tracing back to the file name and then hunting for this particular detail. But that's very time-consuming when instead I can just click on that item, and it's going to actually open that particular drawing and take me to that particular location. So it's a fantastic way to be able to navigate around and see this information. Again, this is actually on a different drawing, and so you'll open it, and it will open its own file as well and take me to that particular view. Very, very powerful stuff. And all it comes down to is these individual 8.5 by 11s. If I pop open the folder, you'll see here that this is saved in that particular folder, in the Sheets folder, and then those individual person files are broken out directly from that point. Okay, so I can run back through that exact same process and actually run it to Excel as well. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm going to close all these individual files and run that exact same process again, file, batch, summary. And instead, I'm going to load batch. So I went through the process of picking out which files I wanted. And so to do that, I'm going to, again, leverage that work that I did once and pull those in. It seems to be having an issue, so I'm just going to go ahead instead and pull those individual sheets. Sorry about that. I'm going to deselect those particular reports I ran before. Let's see if the load config works for me this time. And it does. It did for me. You'll notice that it actually deselected several of those columns and only selected the ones that I care about, in this case, responsibility, date, author, whatever it may be. Now, I can go ahead and add something else I'd like to this for later reuse. Again, it's going to give me that exact same stack I saw before. I don't want the responsibility to be filtered anymore because I'm going to run this as one massive report. I'm going to stick it in the parent folder here. And as I click OK before I do, I'm going to send this to CSV. And you'll see that this runs very similar to the PDF format, but it's going to open automatically in Excel, which if I come over to my second monitor, you'll see that all of this information is included and ready to be leveraged as well. Okay, so from here, let's go ahead and talk about the next feature within Revu, which is Legends. It's a pretty impressive little feature because it allows me to, again, work with the data on my document, but put it on the PDF itself. And so we're going to come down and find a particular legend file here. In this case, you'll see that there's already several different markups. I'm going to pop open my bottom hand panel here, and this takeoff has already been conducted for me. It was very nice that Jeanette Popeil has done that for me. So what I want to do is actually kind of leverage those markups that are already on the page. So the particular workflow here is someone, an estimator, has gone through the process of doing this takeoff, and they want a summary level view of all the information on the page. So what I'm going to do is actually grab all of these markups, multi-select here, right-click, and come down to my Legends menu. Now in this case, you'll notice that I don't have a legend on the page, which is totally fine. So what I'm going to do is create a legend, and it's as simple as that. You'll notice that when I zoom in, I have a broken down spreadsheet with quantities and units measured. So I'm going to go ahead and just place that down onto the page, and you'll see that it's basically summing up all of those individual markups. So concrete, I have essentially 11,000 square feet, whereas carpet, I have 9,700. Resilient flooring, I really only have about 700 square feet. I also want to customize this. I'm going to come over into properties, and I can name this whatever I'd like. So in this title, I'm going to go ahead and call this takeoff. And I can edit the columns I'd like. And you'll notice as I populate this, that this is going to become dynamic. So I go ahead and click OK. By adding the material column, it's actually sub-broken out those different types of carpet into CP2, CP3, and CP1. Same goes for each of those other individual aspects, concrete, all broken out, again, based on that material. So I'm also going to give it a bit of a background. As of right now, it has no fill, and those white lines behind me, or excuse me, black lines, are getting a little interesting. I'm going to give it a line width as well, and maybe turn this into a grid or a table from here. So maybe that's a little abrupt, or I'll change it to black lines. And you can kind of customize this to look and feel exactly the way that you like. So what I'm going to do now, is actually set this as a default. This may be what I want to use as a template for my next workflow. Again, I have the ability to kind of make this dynamic. So keep your eye on the CP floor quantities here. I'm actually going to delete one of these items, and you'll notice that that changed to a 4600 from, what it was before, which was 6800. And you'll be able to see that again in live time as these this particular item updates. So the other workflow I want to show with this is the ability to run this, for example, from punch list type items. So, for example, I've got a punch workflow here with several different punch keys, and I'm going to go ahead and delete this existing legend and start from scratch. So I can do the exact same process I did before, where I select a whole bunch of markups, right-click, and add to a legend, and I can do that from the markups list. Or if I come up to my punch profile, I can utilize the punch keys I already have. So let's go ahead and put this into detail mode and start punching this particular item. So from here, I can place several different markups, and you'll notice that there's already several different punch keys on here. But instead, what I want to do is leverage just the punch keys from this tool set. So I can go ahead and click and place a legend based on the tool set itself, and it's only going to populate with the tools that I dragged out of that particular tool set, as opposed to the other ones that were already existing within that particular space. Now, in this particular drawing, it's been nice enough to be broken out based on spaces, which I want to go ahead and leverage. So I'm going to go ahead and select that particular that legend that I went ahead and placed on the page, and change the properties. And I'm going to go ahead and actually edit those columns and place spaces as a column within this option. And now I don't need responsibility right now because that's not populated. As I click OK, you'll notice that those spaces will update. Now, if I wanted to give, for example, a status as well, let me find the status column here. Go ahead and populate that. Now, these are all unassigned statuses. So what I'm going to do is actually assign a status, and you'll notice that these kind of break out dependent on what I'm telling it. So all of these, again, individual statuses are auto-populating. Okay, so that is Legends. It is a very neat feature. Again, it's all dynamic, and so it's be able to work with it and distribute this information to other people utilizing Bluebeam Revu or View, and be able to share that information at a very high level without having to get into the scary markups list. All right, so the next feature I want to touch on is Revit enhancements. Now, unfortunately, due to some technical difficulties, I don't have Revit on my computer at the moment, so I actually have the ability to play a little video for us. So what we did in the Revit enhancements this year is very heavily improved the plugin that goes into Revu. And actually, I'm going to run this from outside of Revu because I have a video in here. And I'm going to go ahead and mute this as well, since you're all not going to be able to hear it, and just kind of talk through this process. So within Revit, there's the ability to add the Bluebeam Revu add-in, which you'll see here. Now in this video, if we come into settings, and you come down to export rooms to spaces, if whoever created the Revit model went through the process of creating spaces, or excuse me, rooms within that model, and those are all constrained, those can all be exported out to spaces similar to what I alluded to before. There's also the ability to export rooms to area as well, which is a fantastic tool in that whole process of kind of constraining those individual rooms and doing those area takeoffs can all basically be done automatically. So in this case, the video is run and create PDF is selected, and within a couple seconds, that space column over here on the left-hand side is now populated automatically based on those same room constraints that were identified before. All right, so I do want to show what that looks like. Actually, so you'll notice here the rooms, or the spaces are now all populated, and I can kind of click through and see those. But even further than that is all of the area measurements that have now been populated as well, again, dependent on those constraints that were identified back in Revit. So my flooring takeoff, for example, is now done automatically for me, and I would just need to assign those to those individual flooring types, for example. Really, really neat tool. There is a question, is there a way to count tags through Bluebeam without having to do a standard takeoff? If by tags I believe you mean area, then this would be exactly how to do that. If that's not the case or what you're asking within the question, please feel free to elaborate as well, and I'll address that. Again, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A window. All right, so there is a little bit more feature-heavy options within this this plugin enhancements, and that pertains to the ability to export section boxes from Revit with a little bit higher fidelity, as well as the ability to actually export out material properties as well. So it's going to pull out paint colors and material properties. If there's certain hatch patterns and tiling, you can do that as well, and it's going to come over with much higher fidelity than it did previously, where it was mostly grayscale. All right, so I want to get into the next big feature, which is kind of a huge one for me, and that is tags. So for those of you that have utilized the sets functionality, one, I applaud you because that is a very, very powerful feature. But two, it's something that requires a little bit of extra know-how. And so let me pop open my sets tab here. Because there's a certain naming convention that needs to go into the file names and page labels to be able to effectively use sets. And for those of you that are new, sets is basically a way to work with individual files, whether they be one sheet or multiple sheets, as if they were one combined set without bogging down your computer with file size and things like that. So I'm going to show off how to go about actually just creating a brand new set. And this is nothing new, except when I come into this, this file add, there's going to be some additional options within this to be able to start harnessing the data that's actually on the page. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually add some information, or excuse me, some documents. And I'm just going to pick some original files, in this case some architectural, and maybe some civil files here. And you'll see this list is kind of populated, again, with probably a couple dozen different files. But before I click OK and run this process, I'm going to select Options. Now, Options pops up in this menu, and for those of you that got into sets, you may be familiar with categories or some sorting. But really the one I want to get into is what's called tags, the third tab over here. And you'll see this list is kind of pre-populated with sheet name, sheet number, and revision number, and I'm going to add some additional tags to this. In this case, sheet type, and we'll do drawing date, and we'll actually do issued by as well. And I'm actually going to check these two boxes at the bottom for discipline and sheet type. These are AIA standards for those of you that utilize the naming convention for AIA. This will automate those two processes to pull over, for example, the discipline based on the original sheet letter. A for architectural, C for civil, you get the idea. It also is going to automate my revision number for me, so when I put in my baseline Rev0 files, it's going to name them Rev0 automatically for me. These other four are going to be what's called AutoMark. I'm going to pull information directly from the page and be able to populate that into this tagging system. So as I click OK, it's going to go ahead and run this process and actually prompt me to name these particular files. So in this case, there's a title block over here with a file name that I can go ahead and select and be able to populate not just this one particular file instead of having to type it out, but all of the files, because this title block should be consistent. Now, if it's not, Revu is actually smart enough to catch that title blocks will move around and actually populate or prompt you to pick a different region if that title block doesn't have a sheet name. Same thing goes for sheet date, or drawing date, excuse me. And now this is really neat. Again, it's very smart. Here's the drawing date, but for example, if I give it bogus information, it's actually going to prompt me and say, hey, that's not really a drawing date. Do you really want to apply that? No, I don't. So let's put in a real drawing date, in this case January 1st. And then the final one that we need to add is issued by. Now, in this case, our different drafters have been nice enough to give us their information within the title block. So I'm going to apply that as well. And within seconds, I now have this massive table here of all the drawings and all the information that's pertinent to these particular files. So you'll see here revision numbers are all based as 0. The sheet names, or excuse me, sheet numbers are all populated based on what I gave it as a region within the title block. And then sheet type and discipline are actually auto-populating as well, again, based on that AIA naming standards from the sheet number itself. So with that, I go ahead and, oops, I pressed X. Sorry about that, folks. I'm going to go ahead and close this and actually run it again really quick. I don't want to save, but I do want to run this again. Sorry. I'm going to do a smaller sheet set here just to show the example. And I'm just going to do sheet name and sheet number in this particular one. So same process. I got a little too click happy. That's why you should only do one thing at a time. All right. So now I go through, apply those processes. Again, it's pulling over discipline and sheet type dependent on what I gave it. And I go ahead and click OK instead of X. And it's going to pull over that set over here, open that particular file. And you'll notice within the document properties this tags property over here, which is a review specific tags functionality. And so from here, I can go ahead and actually auto revision any files that may come in based on, for example, sheet number, as opposed to any sort of naming convention that's very easy to get messed up. So next thing I'm going to do is actually add some files to this, and they may be some revisions here. I'm going to add some, again, all sorts of files, not just architectural, but you'll see in here some landscaping, piping, and structural files. I go ahead and click open, and it's going to actually look for those particular regions automatically that I assigned for it. Now in this case, it did not pick up my sheet number, so what I'm going to do is actually have to reassign it. Go ahead and click OK. And that's because the title block actually changed. They've, for whatever reason, accidentally shrunk that particular sheet, and so it needed to kind of re-prompt me for that particular information. Again, it's going to auto-populate this table for me, and for files that it sees as a sheet overwrite, it's actually going to revision it for me. So as I click OK, it will apply those tags and actually show me which sheets it revised for me and ask me if I want to pull over the markups. It's also going to show a superseded stamp, which will go back to that superseded stamp that I showed previously. Now as I click OK, and I'm going to come into the architectural files, since those are the ones that got revised, you'll notice that there's not only the kind of the new revision, which is a date of May 6th, but the previous revision, which happens to be superseded stamp, and that was January 1st. So it's able to automate that revisioning process, again, dependent on the sheet number themselves. Now I could run that process again very quickly and pull in revision 2s of these same files. It's going to search for all of that tagging information. It's going to search for region 1 of that sheet number and then come back and search for region 2 as well if it doesn't find anything in region 1. It will, again, auto-revision information, so you'll see some that have Rev 2 as the number, some that are just Rev 1 because there was no, essentially, no Rev 0 as part of that original set of documents. So now I have a whole bunch of information in this tags window here. So if I need to be able to edit stuff, I can. Just select one or multi-select information. In this case, discipline is not assigned, so I can go ahead and type pipe in there and be able to submit that using that audit window. But more importantly than that is the ability to actually export the system out into a smart functionality. So now that the sheets are applied, or excuse me, the tags are applied, and I'm working on my latest and greatest files that do not have a superseded stamp, I want to be able to leverage that data that I've populated within the tags. And that's where export drawing log comes into play. So a drawing log basically acts as a title page, basically signifying what it is that's included within this drawing set. Now in this case, I have a whole bunch of drawings, so I could trim it down to whatever I'd like. But in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and trim down the information. For example, I don't need file path. And I don't actually need page number because most of these are one-page documents. In fact, I don't even need file name if I really don't want it. But I do want, for example, revision number, or is it superseded, true or false. That type of information is going to populate within my drawing log. And as I click next, it's going to prompt me to kind of pick the settings that I want this to export into. Now in this case, I'm going to run it to PDF. But those of you that want to work with the data in Excel or actually another database are able to do that as well via CSV or XLSX. Again, I'm going to do it into PDF and run this exact same process. I have the option to exclude superseded stamps, or excuse me, superseded sheets. So I always have kind of a latest and greatest if I want. In this case, I want to see, have the ability to see what a drawing was before and after revision. And then I have the option to pick where I want to save this particular file. Now the file comes out looking like this. It is a PDF. It's within Revu. And you'll see here I have sheet name, sheet number, sheet type, all directly here on this page. I can pan around, see all that information. And again, anything that's revised has a revision number as well as a true or false under the superseded column here. Now, a lot of these don't have page labels, so I could have removed that. It's okay to include it as well if I want. And then finally, I have the category again, which was auto-populated. Now, what's nice about this is not only is it just not the data, or it's not just the data itself, but each one of these is hyperlinked again back to that particular file. So I can come back and see that Rev 2, that piping diagram, but I can also come back and see the Rev 1, excuse me, wrong click, see the Rev 1, and you'll notice again it's superseded, big old superseded stamp, and I can see, you know, kind of toggle back and forth and see what has changed between Rev 1 and maybe Rev 2. Okay, so from here I'm going to go ahead and close this particular set and just talk through the other general enhancements that we've included. So I know we're kind of up on time very shortly. I do want to kind of show the list of enhancements that were included, or excuse me, talk through them. And it starts with the ability to work with your document management a little bit more effectively. There's some enhancements to be able to work with batch functionality and things like that. This will all be in the release notes. I don't want to bore you with the details, but there's some really neat stuff for if you're working with batch link. You don't have to deal with highlights. There's some more options that don't show up as markups. There's some also a lot of enhancements with the interface itself. For example, if I hover over any one of these tabs, it's going to give me a preview of what it is that's on the page. And very, very easily be able to do that information. There's some alignment properties within markups. Again, I don't want to bore you with all the details, but there's a lot of functionality within those general enhancements as well. That being said, I'm going to open it up for questions at this point, and allow you to kind of work from here. Does anyone have any questions? I do have one. It is kind of an extension of that counting tags capability within Revu. The example that's provided is, say, for example, I have 75 unit heaters, and they're all labeled UH1 through UH75. There's a couple options for the counting, if you will, the count tool within Revu. So under measure, there's the ability to count. In this case, I'm just going to count toilets, and I can click, 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 and it's just going to put a check mark in each toilet. If I come out of that and hover, you'll notice that the number 8 comes up. That means I've checked off of 8 toilets. It also shows up in the comments list. And so it's a very easy way to do that, but it's a bit of a manual process. So instead, I'm going to go ahead and delete that particular markup. And I have the option to pop open my search functionality. So here, I can go ahead and pick a symbol rectangle. In this case, I'm going to use this toilet as an example because I want to count the rest of these as well. Click search. I make no promises on the results here, but it's actually found 13 toilets for me. So I'm going to go ahead and check all and apply a count and see if it caught all those toilets. Now it did catch most of them. You'll notice that the ones that have a handicap bar here are kind of throwing that off. And so I would be able to actually continue that count. So select the count, right-click, and resume count, and be able to apply a check mark there. And you'll notice that the count now becomes 15, which is correct. That would allow you to do that same process as you're mentioning for unit heaters as well. The count tool is very, very neat. All right, other questions? We got a couple minutes. Just want to make sure everyone feels comfortable with this particular information. I know I threw a lot at you. Again, thank you for sticking around and joining me on launch day. All right, I'll go stay online for probably another 60 seconds or so, kind of give everyone some time to type in the window. But with that, I am going to pop open the thank you page with, again, our friends at Novedge. Please go to novedge.com. All right, it looks like I think we're pretty good for now. If you have questions, feel free to contact our folks at novedge.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day.